Assalamu alaikum. I am Dr. Salman. I welcome you here on behalf of Society for Treatment and Study of Pain and Department of Pain Medicine, Shifa International Hospital, Islamabad, at third STSP webinar. Theme of today's discussion is cancer pain management. We start with the name of Almighty Allah. I invite Dr. Muhammad Zubair to recite few verses from Holy Quran.
Jazakallah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والتين والزيتون وطور سينين وهذا البلد الأمين لقد خلقنا الإنسان في أحسن تقويم ثم رددناه أسفل سافلين إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات فلهم أجر غير ممنون فما يكذبك بعد بالدين أليس الله بأحكم الحاكمين. ترجمہ: انجیر کی قسم اور زیتون کی اور طور سینا کی اور امن والے شہر کی، بے شک یقیناً ہم نے انسان کو بہت اچھی صورت میں پیدا کیا اور پھر اسے ہر نیچی سے نیچی حالت کی طرف پھیر دیا، مگر وہ لوگ جو ایمان لائے اور جنہوں نے اچھے کام کیے تو ان کے لیے بے انتہا ثواب ہے۔ تو اب کون سی چیز تجھے انصاف کے جھٹلانے پہ آمادہ کرتی ہے کہ اللہ سب حاکموں سے بڑھ کر حاکم نہیں؟ صدق اللہ العظیم.
Jazakallah, Dr. Zubair. Our first presenter is Dr. Naveed Ahmed Durrani. Dr. Naveed is fellow pain medicine at Shifa International Hospital. He will talk on introduction to cancer pain management.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Dr. Naveed and I'm a fellow pain medicine at Shifa International Hospital. My topic is cancer pain management general principles. To start with, cancer pain actually varies enormously in pathogenesis and presentation, and there are several available treatment options. Cancer pain is basically different because it has both nociceptive and neuropathic elements, and 64% of cancer patients experience pain, out of which 33 to 35% of the patient continue to experience pain despite the treatment. There are different mechanisms involved in the pain production in the cancer patients, among which there are local mass effect that causes the local inflammation, compression of the surrounding tissue, edema, and ischemia of the surrounding tissue. Paraneoplastic syndrome that causes the production of autoantibodies that lead to the auto-destruction of the body. And treatment-related pain, it can be chronic post-surgical pain, it can be radiation-associated neuritis or neuropathies, or it can be chemotherapy-induced neuropathies. And among superadded conditions like infection, immunosuppression, organ failure, electrolyte imbalance that may contribute to pain. The nociceptive component of the pain is more or less similar as the nociceptive pain of any other acute pain. Like the stimulus is generated through the nociceptive, it is perceived and transmitted to dorsal root ganglion, and from there they travel through dorsal column to the second order neuron, and then to third order neuron and to the sensory cortex. The thing which is different in cancer pain is basically the mechanism of stimuli, which is basically a complex of different stimuli that involves the mechanical compression due to the mass effect of the tumor on the surrounding tissue, causing the edema, inflammation, and ischemia of the surrounding tissue. Plus, these mechanisms, they lead to a different chemical mediator release that ultimately form the sensitizing soup around the local nerves, and they through complex mechanisms cause the peripheral as well as central sensitization of the nerves. And plus they also cause the local irritation of the nerves, and that can lead to acute pain. Second, the metastatic phenomena of the cancers, especially in the bones, that causes the release of interleukin 1 and interleukin 6 and receptor activative nuclear factor. These mediators basically disturb the balance between the osteoblastic and osteoclastic activity. They shift the balance towards the osteoclastic activity, and they lead to bone resorption and further tumor expansion, and that may lead to pathological fractures and pain. Now, coming to methods of cancer pain control, there are different modalities like pharmacological, oncological, surgical, interventional, psychological, physiotherapy, and complementary modalities like acupuncture, aromatherapy, etc. The mainstay of the pharmacological therapy still lies on WHO analgesic ladder, though there are now a bit changes had been advocated by WHO that they have put the interventional therapy at the first position to reduce the analgesic requirement of other drugs. So depending on the pain, non-opioids are still at the number one level, like aspirin, paracetamol, and NSAIDs. For moderate pain, they advocate weak opioids, and for severe pain, they advocate strong opioids with or without adjuvants. Now, I'm not actually going into the details of the opioids, but I'm just giving the general plan regarding the usage of opioids. General plan is that we use on regular basis long-acting opioid or sustained release preparation like fentanyl patches, and we use short-acting or rapid-acting opioid for breakthrough pain. And opioids have to be reviewed every 2 to 3 days for oral drugs, and every 5 to 6 days for transdermal preparations to titrate the optimum dose. These are general side effects like sedation, constipation, confusion. The thing to be noticed in these patients is basically they require long-term use for opioid, and they develop tolerance or dependence. And in some cases, we can see opioid-induced hyperalgesia, endocrine dysfunction, and long-term use can even cause immunosuppression and accelerated carcinomatosis. So the management principles for the side effects are we can reduce the opioid dose or even totally stop it by using the opioid sparing agents, or we can rotate the opioid with equianalgesic dose of another opioid. For side effect, we can also add the symptomatic treatment. Like for constipation, we can use laxatives. For nausea and vomiting, we can use antiemetic drugs. And for severe side effects, we can use a specific antagonist like naloxone and naltrexone. And addiction, that is quite common with long-term opioid use, and we have to identify the addictive behavior of the patient. We should dispense small amounts of drugs, and 24-hour dose count should be done. And if we identify that patient is showing signs of addiction, then urine toxicology is the answer. Ketamine is actually a very good analgesic. It is NMD antagonist, and that's why it can manage the neuropathic component of the pain. It has allodinic effect, anti-hyperalgesic effect, and it can be used in patient with to reverse the opioid-induced hyperalgesia, and it can reverse the opioid tolerance. Cannabinoids, these are basically under trial drugs, and the extracts that are cannabidiol and tetrahydrocannabinol, they are mostly under trial, and they are used in the management of cancer in patients who are having dose limiting side effects due to opioids, or further therapeutic benefits are unlikely with escalating dose of opioids. Endpoints in these trials are not only improvement in the pain scores, but also the sleep pattern, appetite, mood, and general well-being. Now, for the neuropathic patients, neuropathic pain component, we can use antidepressants like tricyclic antidepressants, anticonvulsants like pregabalin and gabalin, capsaicin, and lignocaine. This diagram is basically a simplified form of NICE guidelines that they advise that in the start we should either use pregabalin or amitriptyline, and if we get inadequate response, then we switch to the other drug on the second step. But if even then we do not get any adequate response, then we should go for adding strong opioids, or these capsaicin or lignocaine, or any other intervention that is appropriate for the pain. Steroids basically have anti-inflammatory effect, and they basically reduce the inflammatory mediator release that can cause the pain relief. Steroid can be given to reduce inflammation and edema, and with the tumor growth, so thus reducing the mass effect of the tumor. And the useful side effects, especially in the cancer patient, that it improves the appetite, so it can manage the cachexia of the patient. And but the harmful effects are that they can cause immunosuppression, that can lead to superadded infections, and osteoporosis that can worsen the bone metastasis. Bisphosphonates, they help in reducing bone pain by preventing osteoclastic activity. Then they reduce the bone metastasis at early stage. They are useful if used at early stage, but if once the bone metastasis is like fully developed, then there is no much use of bisphosphonates, and especially in some studies, it is shown to reduce the mortality by 20 to 30%. It also improves the neuropathic element of pain, but its common side effects are GI side effects and osteonecrosis of the jaw. Antispasmodics are basically used to relieve the smooth muscle spasm, and like anticholinergic drugs and calcium channel blockers are mostly used. And for skeletal muscles, we can use agents like baclofen, and even diazepam has shown some promising results. Other drugs that can be used are paracetamol, or NSAIDs can also be used. Now, oncological, their basic mechanism in reducing the pain is that they reduce the burden of the tumor, thus reducing the pressure effect on the surrounding tissue, reducing the inflammation and edema, and ultimately the release of inflammatory as well as ischemic mediators. The modalities involve chemotherapy, radiotherapy, hormone therapy that can be used alone or in combination. Chemotherapy basically it targets the mitosis of the cells and causes their destruction. And side effects are diarrhea, mucositis, hair loss, and neurotoxicity. Radiotherapy, they are especially helpful in management of the metastasis, especially bony metastasis. They work by disrupting the cellular DNA, leading to death. Different forms are localized external beam radiotherapy, that is basically localized beam of radiotherapy targeting the tumor mass. Wide field external beam radiotherapy that usually target the upper or lower half of the body, and especially used where the metastasis has been widespread. Brachytherapy, they inject the or implant the radioactive material near the tumor mass, and from there the radiation can be directly supplied to the tumor mass. And radioisotope treatment, they inject intravascular or orally administered the radioisotopes. Side effects are very commonly seen, like radiation neuritis and plexopathies. Hormone therapy, hormone therapy is basically used for hormone sensitive tumors like breast tumors and prostate, and hormone imbalance and impaired reproductive function are common side effects. Immune therapy is also used, radioimmunotherapy and chemical immunotherapy. They are usually used in the treatment of lymphomas. Surgery that can be curative or palliative depending on the type of cancer. And physical and psychological support are very, very important for the patient, because for long-term disease, the patients usually are depressive and they need psychological support, and they are usually bedridden, so they need physical support. And complementary therapies are used in the combination of these pharmacological and conventional therapies like acupuncture, massage, aromatherapy, reflexology, and herbal and homeopathic medicines. And in the last, interventions are used for the pain management, like diagnostic blocks, permanent blocks, like chemical neurolysis, radiofrequency ablation, cryotherapy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Naveed. Our next speaker is Dr. Atikur Rahman Ghafoor. Dr. Atiq is consultant anesthesiologist and pain specialist at Shaukat Khanum Memorial Hospital, Lahore. He will talk on interventional pain management.
Assalamu alaikum. I am Dr. Atiq from the Shaukat Khanum. So I'm just going to briefly talk about the complex cancer pain management and the role of interventions in the pain management. So you all can hear me? Dr. Salman, can you confirm again, please?
जी अब ठीक है. It's
Perfect.
fine now.
Perfect. Incidence of cancer pain has not been really changed since even the introductions of the very aggressive pain therapies. So overall, even if you treat the cancer, it leaves the scar in the form of the pain in more than 30% of the individuals. And overall incidence is little more than 60% even during the treatment and advanced diseases and all stages. So very, very important slide, very important. I think so it's very important whole of my presentation. So a couple of definitions. You need to be really, really clear about these definitions. So cancer pain, it's the pain that directly caused due to the tumor. So either it could be the mass effect of the tumor, or the tumor may be causing ischemia, or it may be compressing the nerves. So it's directly due to the tumor is cancer pain. Pain in cancer, so that's the pain that's either due to the cancer treatment or already existing comorbid conditions, like the patient has osteoarthritis already, even before the diagnosis of the cancer, or he may have developed osteoarthritis during the cancer treatment, or the neuropathy induced by the chemotherapy during the cancer treatment is a pain in cancer. Complex cancer pain is an area that we generally end up with a pain specialist. So this is the pain that does not respond very well to the conventional pain therapy, or the pain is multifactorial. So 25% of all the pains in cancer patients are pain in cancers. They are not because of the cancer directly. They are most of the time secondary to the comorbid condition. So it's important to know these definitions. So you're not being as aggressive for the pain in cancer as you're going to be aggressive for the cancer pain. So certain syndromes that the pain specialist generally encounter in a cancer setup or in a non-cancer setup, even if you see the cancer patient, they're very important to know the pathophysiology and how they present. Bone pain is the most commonest form of the cancer pain. 70% of the breast and the prostate cancer metastasize to the bone, and it depends where they metastasize, they cause the pain. So if the disease is in the vertebral body, you may get a pain in the midline. If it's in the pedicle, it may compress the nerve root there. If it is in the thoracic area, it may cause the band-like pain. If it's in the lumbar area, it may cause the radicular pain or the radiculopathy there. In the cervical area, they may present with the Horner syndrome. Spinal cord compression occurs overall in 3% of the cancer patients. Most common area is the upper lumbar. In the start, when the compression is starting, or maybe the disease is just growing into the vertebra, it may present localized pain. But once it has happened and it's not surgically resectable, you may have a patient in pain clinic with the central neuropathic pain. Chest wall, we see the chest wall pain either primarily lung disease or secondary to the mesothelioma. Mesothelioma mainly involve the pleura, and you generally get the pleuritic-like pain. That's bad with the breathing cycle there. And once it's involved the ribs and vertebra again, you may get the sympathetic chain involvement and the unilateral sweating problems as well. Brachial plexopathy, commonly you see with the Pancoast tumors and the localized advanced breast cancer. It may occur iatrogenically after the surgery there, and most commonly the nerve roots involved are the C7-T1. Pancreatic pain most commonly occur with the mass in the head of the pancreas, especially when it's obstructing the ampulla of the Vater. Most commonly it's upper abdomen, but once it's radiating to the back, this means it's involving the celiac plexus, or the disease has spread to the retroperitoneum. Lumbosacral plexopathy, most commonly in case of the pelvic tumors and the renal bed tumors. Pelvic pain, most common cause is the rectal tumors. Most of the time the patient is unable to sit in case of the pelvic pain there. So assessment is very important. We do have a system to assess the cancer that's called the TNM staging, and it's being used since 40s, but specifically in relation to the assessment for the cancer pain, we don't have any specific tool yet, although there have been many studies and there have been many forums who have been trying to do it, but there is no specific tool to assess the cancer pain yet. There are a number of the other tools that's being used for the non-cancer pain as well, and they're validated. So brief pain inventory is one of them. Critical care pain observation tool is for those who are critically ill or unable to communicate. Same for the dementia patients there. So if you don't have the tool, but since you're medical college, you know, like the history, examination, and investigation. History is very, very important. You identify like what's the background pain, what's the breakthrough pain, examination involving the sensory and the motor, specifically once you're going to do the intervention there, and the investigation if you think like that's going to help you. Very important concept. I just put this slide, breakthrough pain. So it's a transient exacerbation of the pain in the background of the well-controlled background pain. So it could be incidental, it could be spontaneous. Incidental can be predictable, unpredictable, and the spontaneous is just spontaneous, not related to any incident there. And the spontaneous one is really hard to control. Important thing about the breakthrough pain, it's not the regular analgesia that you need to increase in case of the breakthrough pain. So it's something else you need to add on to address this issue. So general principles for treating any pain, specifically for the cancer pain. First, do no harm. If you can't help, you can't help. If you can't do anything, you can't do anything. Second, don't use a single regime for every patient. You need to individualize your pain care for every patient. Third, repeated evaluations, aim and good listening. So that's very, very important. Once you have done your assessment, you have done your recognition of the pain, you have had a plan there, you again reassess everything, whether it's working for the patient or not. Do we really need to change anything there? So what are the barriers there? So once you have examined the patient, you have a plan there. So what we have seen in our setup, there's a lack of comprehensive approach. So you may be doing very well on your part, but you may be missing specific aspects of the pain care there. And commonly we see like we do miss the psychosocial aspect there. Lack of communication between the patient and between physician to physician is another issue there. There are fears existing among the patients and the physicians, and our physicians still have the fears specifically regarding the opioids there. So you do need to address the barrier as well for a successful outcome. So specifically in relation to the management, I'll come to the interventional part later on, but just briefly, WHO letter has been there since 1980s. WHO revised its guideline in 2018, and Pakistan was a part of this group who has revised the guidelines. Dr. Gaurav Shah, probably from the Pakistan there, was in this group. And then there are a couple of other models other than the WHO letter. We'll talk about them. So it's very simple, has been effective so-called. Has it really helped? Yes, it has helped in certain ways, like the legislation. So people have been quoting it in the areas where they don't have the opiates. That WHO has suggested that the opiates should be there. They're the cornerstone for the cancer pain management. And by quoting the WHO, they have been able to get the opiates in their countries. Clinical efficacy, there have been case series to assess the clinical efficacy of the WHO letter, and they have shown like it's really helpful. It does have the limitation. It doesn't say anything about the noxious stimulus, but the other models do say it's a one-way escalation. It doesn't talk about like how to reduce the medications when the pain has been good. It doesn't talk about the intervention, and there has been no revision specifically about the latter, although there is a new document recording the cancer pain management by the WHO. So that's the new guidelines. There has been nothing really new in these guidelines other than they have been talking about the individualized care and the new therapies that have been available, specifically, for example, like for the bone pain, if it is multi-axial and you can use the certain agent like the strontium there. So another model that has been suggested by the American Agency for the Healthcare Policy and the Research in 1994, it is a pyramid, there are ribbons there. Pyramids represent the hierarchy of the pain management. On the baseline, there is the least invasive, and on the, if you go top, there are the invasive steps you can take for the management of the pain there. So as it's showing there, only 2 to 5% needs the invasive intervention. Most of the patients are okay with the non-interventional pain management. So more than 80% are okay, like actually with the drugs there. And the ribbons are the adjuvant set that can be added at any stage of the pain management. So this is the model suggested by the European Journal of the Pain back in 2001. Very simple. And this model talks about the noxious stimulus there. So first of all, remove that if you can. Then address the patient pain threshold issues. That's mainly the psychosocial effects. So address the anxiety, address the depression, and address any other emotional issues there. Use the opiates and also use the non-opiates for the neuropathic pain there. So this is about the general assessment and the model. So practically, what we are going to do, so step one, treat the underlying cause. If you can remove the tumor, if you can use the radiation specifically for the bone pain localized. If it is sensitive, can we give the chemotherapy? It may be palliative. Interventional radiology, can the tumor be embolized and the mass effect can be taken away? Psychosocial issues, I have been talking again and again about it. Address the patient beliefs about the pain. Specifically in case of cancer setting, they may be thinking once the cancer is there, pain is there, it's not going to go away. But you need to tell them, yeah, pain can be managed there. So this is just a brief summary. NSAIDs, bisphosphonates, steroids, particularly good for the bone pain and the capsular pain. For the neuropathic, we know it's anticonvulsants, antidepressants there. Topical agents, not really helpful in case of the cancer pain, but sometimes they can act as a rescue therapy there. Muscle spasms, you can use benzodiazepines and opioids. So I will just briefly talk about opioids there. So Lancet Commission report, we have been talking about it again and again, released in 2018. That's a work of 3 years in 25 countries. And what they have been talking about, most of the people who are dying in the countries, dying with the serious health problem, 80% of them were living in countries where there were inadequate palliative care and inadequate pain relief services. So if you see in this report, they have shown like the opiate consumption globally. If you just look in the North America there, their usage in USA has been 3,000% plus. In Canada, it's the same. But if you look in the Afghanistan, it's just between 0.2% there. And this is just a picture from the Afghanistan. They are just packing the raw opium, one of the largest producer of the opium in the world. And 40% of this opium is being transported to the whole world through Pakistan. And we just do get the share in streets and not as a proper medical share there. So which opiate to use? Morphine is the most studied one in relation to the cancer. Most of the places it's available. But having said that, others should be available because not everybody is going to respond to the morphine there, depending upon the pharmacogenetics. And the benefit of the other opiates, they may cause a less nausea, vomiting, constipation. And the most important benefit, they can be given by the other route, like the fentanyl transdermal patches there. So tapentadol is a new entry in our country. It's being used in the Europe. It's a pure mu agonist and it's moderate to severe pain. The formulation we are having in Pakistan is immediate release, and I found it useful for the breakthrough pain there. So opiate controversies, very important to talk about these. Patients do ask these questions. These are not the issues in case of cancer patients. You need to tell them clearly to the patient and to the physicians as well. So addiction has not been reported in cancer patients. Tolerance, yeah, that can be an issue, but there is no dose limitation in cancer patients. They are pretty safe if they're used in the proper way as advised. They are the best drugs for the pain relief in cancer patients. And you need to tell them it's not the euthanasia there. So cannabis, a lot of talk about the cannabis for the chronic pain there. Still, there's a limited evidence, as already been said. Being in Pakistan, there are a lot of varieties. Aga Khan is doing a project to see whether it's really good for the pain or not. I think so they're doing particularly for the breast and the prostate cancer there. So Israel is doing a lot of work there. They have a Canex forum there. They recently did a webinar as well, and they're working a lot on the cannabis there. So if you take like the major pain societies, like the Faculty of the Pain Medicine by the Royal College of Anaesthetists, UK, and the Australian New Zealand College of Anaesthetists, they don't really recommend the cannabis for the chronic pain. Americans are confused. They haven't given a clear statement regarding the use of cannabis for the chronic pain. So intervention-wise, as we have seen, only 2 to 5% of the patients do need interventions. And these are the patients who really have the complex pain. So timing of the intervention, when we should do like the first presentation in the clinic, we should delay like the patient is on the deathbed. So it again depends like the clinical judgment. Certain areas where you can do it early, for example, it's inoperable pancreatic cancer or the recurrent pancreatic cancer. So I don't find any reason to delay it. If you delay it, your neurotic agent may not reach the reflexes there. So it's again clinical judgment, but most of the time doing it early may be beneficial. And it's only the Dutch Society of the Anesthesiologists that do recommend doing the interventions early. Should we doing the diagnostic block before the neurologic blocks? Again, a tricky area. Maybe where there's a loss of motor functions, do a diagnostic block and then talk to the patient, like, is it worth doing? If you get the relief there, maybe it's worth doing. Radio frequency lesioning, maybe a little better than the neurolytic agents in causing a localized lesion, but the results may not be as good as with the neurolytic agents. Cordotomy is reserved for the patients where nothing is really working. We are using an intrathecal neurolysis there. So if you're using the alcohol, you can use between 30 to 100%. We are using absolute. So depending upon the area where you are doing, generally the bad side, you keep it up and slightly tilted forward. And you can see there in the black, like the alcohol is spreading in the posterior and the upper area. So affecting mainly the sensory nerve roots there. So with the phenol, generally is hyperbaric. So you keep the bad side or painful side down and slightly tilted backward. So the spread will be again to the areas that's involving the nerve roots causing the pain there. So these are the agents that you can use, their benefits. So alcohol generally start after 3 to 5 days, and phenol does have the local anesthetic properties, will start straightforward there. So where there is nothing really working, intrathecal drug delivery comes in. In Pakistan, we don't have the implantable systems. Mainly, we are using the non-implantable system. Most of the patients where your neurolytic blocks haven't worked, these medications generally works. So here we have opioids in the form of fentanyl and the local anesthetic. We don't have the ziconotide here, but that would be the gold standard in patients with nothing really working there. So in summary, proper assessment called the global assessment, look every aspect of the pain, address psychosocial issues, initiate the pain therapy as early as possible, don't delay it, then maintain it wherever you get a relief there. For every patient, it's a different dose and a different regime there. And the pain care should be an integrated part of overall cancer care there. So that's all from my side. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Dr. Atiq, for very comprehensive presentation on cancer pain management. Now I'm going to invite Dr. Aqdas Qazi. She is palliative care consultant at Shifa International Hospital, and she will talk on end-of-life care. Dr. Aqdas Qazi, please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, thank you very much, Dr. Salman, for giving me the opportunity to talk about end-of-life care at this platform. Why are we talking about dying when we are talking about management of pain in acute pain and in chronic pain settings? Generally, people are living longer. And sadly, as Dr. Atiq also mentioned, that we have very little community support of doctors and nurses. So even when the patients and the families know that the patient is dying, they still prefer to come to the hospital because they feel that it is a safety net and they feel that they would be better looked after. But we as a community of doctors, are we trained to talk about death and dying? I feel that it is still a very taboo subject and it is a difficult conversation which maybe we are not trained enough to talk about it. And these are difficult conversations and sometimes we feel that it is somebody else's responsibility to do this. As a culture, we doctors tend to treat. So giving up on a patient, talking about death and dying feels that we are abandoning the patient. But that is not the case. I think that Dr. Salman realizes the importance of end-of-life care and wants us to work as a team to treat these patients and support them and their families. Because no one else is going to do it and we as a team need to do it. So the learning objectives of our talk are how to identify a dying patient, what symptoms would these patients have, and in the current times, thinking out of the box, communication and shared decision making, and focusing all the care on patient-centered care. So how do we know that a patient is dying and is not unwell because of treatable, potentially reversible causes? So these patients have had all the treatments, for example, for AKI, for electrolyte imbalance, hypercalcemia, sepsis, disease progression in advanced, incurable, progressive cancers, but the patient is not improving. Some symptoms and signs of dying. So the family would report that the patient is not eating and drinking much, is sleeping more than usual, less interested in the surroundings, and decreased level of consciousness. Clinically, the nurse might report that the urine output is less, the blood pressure is on the lower side, the pulse is either weak or thready, or the patient has tachycardia. The extremities are cold, and towards the terminal stage, the patient would have some mottling of skin and peripheral cyanosis. The breathing pattern would change. They might have tachypnea, Cheyne-Stokes breathing, agonal breathing, and apneic spells. And towards the end, the death rattle or the death rails. Sometimes these patients are very agitated, which we call terminal agitation. So we have diagnosed a dying patient, and how would you manage the patient? So we will focus on the 4 main symptoms: pain, agitation, nausea and vomiting, and respiratory secretions. So let us talk through these symptoms and their management whilst we discuss a case which is a real life case. So this 70-year-old lady with metastatic left breast cancer, brain and bone mets, and malignant left pleural effusion with a pigtail in place comes to my clinic in a wheelchair accompanied by her 2 daughters. This patient is a retired school principal and is aware of her diagnosis of cancer and the extent of disease, and is very clear about what she wants and, importantly, what she doesn't want. So in the first meeting, she clearly told me that she did not want any interventions which would tie her down to a machine, and did not want a machine to breathe for her. Few days later, she comes to the ER with upper GI bleed because the documentation had been done about her wishes and preferences. So the DNR paperwork was completed, and it was decided that the ceiling of treatment would be maximum ward management. As the bleeding settled, endoscopy was not done. And although she had had a GI bleed, but she was transferred to the ward and not to a critical area. Now, this patient was, I would say, an ideal patient because she had expressed that she never wanted an NG tube to be placed, even though she might not be able to eat or drink. Her symptoms of pain were managed because oral route was not sustainable, with a continuous morphine sulfate infusion, with PRN doses, as Dr. Ateek mentioned, for breakthrough pain. Tachypnea, the treatable causes, anemia, LRTI, pleural effusion were managed, and opioids and oxygen were given. Because she was mildly agitated, benzodiazepines were used with continuous infusion and small doses for PRN for management of her anxiety and agitation. Respiratory secretions, we repositioned her, reduced her fluids, and used injection glycopyrrolate. Generally, the suctioning was avoided because it is traumatic and causes discomfort to the patient. Good mouth care and eye care was provided by the nursing staff and her daughters. She died peacefully in the ward with all her wishes and preferences being respected, and dignity was maintained. This is a very ideal scenario where we know what the patient wants, and the patient and the family are both on the same page. But sadly, this is not always the case. Before we move further, I would say that these patients who are in the wards and under our care should have anticipatory prescribing. So despite the fact that they are on a continuous infusion of morphine or fentanyl or midazolam, they should have medications as a PRN so that these are available without delay, and by the time you or the palliative team reaches the patient, the nurse is able to give these medications. The least invasive route is used, either intravenous, preferably not a PICC line, preferably not a central line. If the patient has had a massive hemoptysis or GI bleed, anticipate that they would have it again. Or if the patient has stridor, they can have acute airway obstruction. In that case, make sure that the handover is good and it is communicated to the on-call night team, and there is emergency supply of midazolam available on the ward. How are we going to move forward, especially in the current climate where COVID has made people very apprehensive about coming to the hospital? So I think we would need to focus more on community-based care. So we might have to manage patients whom we have never met except through telemedicine. We have not formed a rapport relationship with the patient, but these patients do need end-of-life care. So recently I've had a 41-year-old lady with metastatic left breast cancer, skeletal hepatic skin mets, and mets to the opposite breast. She was referred from oncology. Her symptoms were well settled. For pain, she was on a fentanyl patch. She had Panadol and pregabalin. She had hypoxia and had home oxygen arranged. Some problems with skin, and she had constipation. The important thing is that she was 41, and throughout her journey of cancer, she had been her own decision maker. Her husband had supported her throughout. They had 4 children, and they did not have any medical support at home, just some nursing support. But in the first meeting, she had said that whatever happens, she would want to remain at home. So this patient, and she would not want any IV fluids and no NG tube. So it was difficult to manage this patient and required a lot of care and coordination. But I think that this is where we are heading. When these patients would want to remain at home, this would be challenging, but we will have to work within the resources. I could not give her injectable opioids for home. So she managed with just the fentanyl patch that she had, and other symptoms were managed. For agitation, she had midazolam, and for secretion, she had glycopyrrolate. There was the family was not too happy. The extended family wanted NG in place. They could not let her starve to death, and they wanted her to come to the hospital for end-of-life care. So this, however, this patient right till the end was very clear-headed and made sure that they listened to her. So I think we are heading towards telemedicine, where we would have to empower the patient's families and their own home care nurse, give good caregiver training to the patient's families. But we need to have a system in place which offers 24/7 availability for support, because that is the only thing that would give these patients and their families confidence that they can be managed at home. So we also need to think about thinking of death as not such a medical thing. So I think we have reached a stage where we try to correct the correctable causes, but there comes a stage when even after 10 days of intravenous antibiotics, the patient is still not improving, and we can see that the patient is dying. So I think we need to step back and see that where are we heading. And also, especially in hospitals, we tend to keep the families away from all these apps of which bring them closer to the patient and also give them a feeling of involvement, like turning, personal care, changing, mouth care, care of eyes. So we need to have a change of behavior where we involve families, think of death as something which can be a good experience for the patient and the families, and less medicalization of death. Communication and shared decision making. DNR is important. The misconception is that once the DNR paperwork is complete, the patient will not receive any other treatment, and it means that we just give up on the patient. We all know that this is not true. DNR patients do receive oxygen, they do receive antibiotics, they do receive IV fluids. It is just that it is the goals of care change towards comfort measures and no critical care. Then, as Dr. Atiq mentioned, people have reservations about opioids. They feel कि morphine start करेंगे तो फिर तो जल्दी end हो जाएगा. Yeah, if we don't give them IV fluids, if we don't give them NG feed, TPN, the patient will starve to death, and we are actually hastening the dying process. We know that these fluids at this stage would only worsen the dependent edema, ascites, pulmonary edema, pleural effusion, and in the long term will not improve the functional status and will not prolong survival, and actually worsen the secretions towards the end, making it more uncomfortable for the patient. So we as a team, whenever we review the patient, always review the medications and only make sure that the patient is having only those medications which are of actual benefit to the patient. So some examples of these medications, the patient in the terminal phase does not really need these. Labs only do those blood tests which are actually going to change the management. Oxygen, the SATs drop and we attach a nasal cannula and a face mask. Face mask is very uncomfortable for the patient, dries the mouth, and actually the patient cannot speak. Then the other thing, we attach a cardiac monitor. The whole family is focused on looking at the numbers. So try to make the care which is patient-centered and comfort and providing comfort to the patient. Try to treat the treatable. If the patient has urinary retention, pass a Foley's catheter, relieve constipation. Posture change doesn't have to be 4-hourly, as per need. So the take-home message is we should learn to recognize the skill to recognize a dying patient. The main symptoms, pain and dyspnea, opioids are the mainstay. Agitation, benzodiazepines, sometimes the fan helps. Secretions, repositioning and injection glycopyrrolate. Try to avoid suctioning as much as possible. Metoclopramide, haloperidol or steroids where there is raised intracranial pressure on densitron. Basically, patient-centered care, a caring workforce for these patients. Good teamwork, family meetings, identify the decision maker of the family and communicate prognosis and identify goals of care. You would be seeing these patients in the critical areas and on the wards, and sometimes the patients feel more comfortable not to talk to the primary consultant but the referral team. And especially if they have a long trusting relationship with the pain team, then they might want to involve the pain team in decision making and in identifying goals of care. Education and training to develop standardized care across hospital and a skilled workforce. But we have to work within the available resources. If certain medications like morphine is not available, then we have to work around them. This is a very good book by Atul Gawande, Being Mortal, which I think we should read. And lastly, a quote by Dame Cicely Saunders, who was the founder of modern hospice movement, that how people die remains in the memory of those who live on. Any questions? I should be happy to answer by email. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Aqdas Qazi. It was wonderful presentation by her on end-of-life care, and many questions which usually we find difficulty in managing patient. She very clearly explained these issues. Thank you, Dr. Aqdas.
Thank you.
Now we move on to our panel discussion, and I welcome to all the panelists here. We know that effective pain management has a humanitarian role, and there should be no pain, particularly cancer patients. In those patients, pain is one of the most feared symptoms in patients suffering from cancer. 1 out of 3 patients suffers from pain at the diagnosis, and when they start treatment and with the disease advancement, 80% of patients then usually suffer from pain of variable intensity. Our worthy panelists today are Brigadier Asif Golkiani. He is President STSP, and formerly he was working at CMH Rawalpindi at Pain Center. Professor Khalid Bashir, he is Professor of Anesthesiology and Pain Management at Hamid Latif and National Hospital. He is Dean of Anesthesiology at CPSP. Professor Gaurav Shah, she is Head of Department of Anesthesiology and Pain Management at Aga Khan Hospital, and she is pioneer in setting up pain clinic in Pakistan. Professor Dr. Saleh Khashkhali is Pro-Vice Chancellor and Head of the Department of Anesthesiology and Pain Management at People's Medical University, Nawabshah. Mohammad Farooq, he is working as consultant radiation oncologist at Shifa International Hospital. Professor Dr. Munir Ahmed Chaudhary, he was head of the Department of Anesthesiology and Pain Management at Nishtar Medical University. Dr. Atikur Rahman Ghafoor is consultant anesthesiologist and pain specialist at Shaukat Khanum Memorial Cancer Hospital. Dr. Romana Durrani, she is also working as consultant anesthesiologist and pain specialist at Shaukat Khanum Memorial Cancer Hospital. Lieutenant Colonel Rashid Iqbal, he is young pain specialist, first qualified FCPS pain medicine in first attempt in Pakistan, and he is working as pain specialist at CMH Rawalpindi. He is also youngest supervisor in pain medicine. So let's start our discussion on cancer pain management. I first request Professor Khalid Bashir I request him to tell us the types of pain often caused by cancer. Dr. Khalid?
I'm sorry, I joined late a bit. I was stuck in the theater. Cancer pain patients are quite miserable patients. They have multiple types of pain. They can have multiple kinds of pain. For example, they can have a pain which is caused purely by the tumor expansion or release of mediators. So partial effects of tumor, especially bones or abdomen soft tissues. Then these patients are given chemotherapy and radiation therapies to treat pain caused by the treatment. For example, when you give chemotherapy, it does have side effects of neuropathic pain or extent pains, muscular pain, myalgia. And then radiation therapy also affects tissues. For example, you have given radiation after CA breast in the axilla. Then plexus, like plexopathy, plexus radiation, neuritis, neuropathy, cause itself. And not cancer patient is caused by the cancer itself. Pain because of some of the pathology. Pain because so one should pain is by generally because of cancer or cancer treatment or this pathology like osteoarthritis or this even this prolapse. Different kinds of pain that when the patient present in a pain center completely. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Khalid Bashir. Brigadier Asif Kiani, can you hear me? आसिफ साहब का कुछ कनेक्शन में थोड़ा सा प्रॉब्लम चल रहा है जी डॉक्टर आसिफ जी अब आपकी आवाज आ रही है वेलकम डॉक्टर आसिफ कियानी
थैंक यू सो मच
Dr. Asif Kiani, would you tell us what role does pain control plays in the overall healing process?
In the overall healing process, you mean in a cancer patient or in any patient, in a post-operative case?
In cancer patients.
You mean in healing of cancer or healing of some other?
Healing of treatment of cancer.
Okay. I think like all other problems where body has to use its defense mechanism. Similarly, the cancer pain is the cancer patient needs its own defense mechanism, his body's immunity to combat that. And in addition to those oncology treatments and different things. But once you have a severe intractable pain, your body immunity, it is generally not in that combative mode. So I don't have any concrete answer on your question, but this is my own impression, having seen patients like this, that one must treat patient the pain, not just to improve the quality of life in general, which is our aim most of the time. But there may be, or there must be some impact on the recovery or the healing, or if it's possible healing, then yes, maybe. But I do not have any statistics on this.
Thank you, Dr. Asif. कुछ और भी कहना चाहेंगे आप?
मैं तो यही कहना चाह रहा हूँ, जनरली अगर हम इस पे बात करें कि जी जो पेन क्यों ट्रीट करना चाहिए, या हमारा आमतौर पे जब हम कैंसर पेशेंट का पेन ट्रीट करते हैं, तो उसमें जो फैक्टर्स सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट ये है कि एक जो स्वेयर पेन है वो पेशेंट की क्वालिटी ऑफ लाइफ को फर्दर डिटेरियोरेट कर रहा होता है, जो ऑलरेडी इट्स नॉट जस्ट द पेशेंट विच इज हु इज अफेक्टेड, इट्स एक्चुअली द होल फैमिली. और हमारा जो सोशल सेटअप है, इसमें फैमिली पूरी तरह इन्वॉल्व होती है पेशेंट के साथ. अगर पेशेंट को रात को नींद नहीं आ रही बिकॉज ऑफ पेन, तो एटलीस्ट हाफ ऑफ द फैमिली विल बी अवेक द होल नाइट, और इस तरह से वो सारी फैमिली की मिजरी होती है. तो वी मस्ट रिलीव पेन, और वो उससे ये होगा कि सारी फैमिली जो है उसको उसकी क्वालिटी ऑफ लाइफ इंप्रूव होगी. और ये मेरा पर्सनल एक्सपीरियंस है जो लोगों के साथ हमने डील करते हैं. तो वी सी के जी इट्स एक्चुअली द डिमांड और रिक्वायरमेंट ऑफ द फैमिली कि आप किसी तरीके से पेन रिलीव करते हैं. जो ट्रीटमेंट है वो तो जिंदगी मौत एवरीबॉडी एक्सेप्ट्स कि जी ये अल्लाह ताला के इख्तियार में है, और उससे तो है, लेकिन है कि पेशेंट शुड बी फ्री ऑफ पेन, वेदर जो नियर डियर्स हैं उसको एवरीबॉडी लाइक्स लाइक दैट. थैंक यू.
You are very right, Dr. Kyani, that only patient is not suffering. Actually, whole family is suffering from that pain. My next question is from Professor Gaurav Shah. Madam, what kind of treatments are available for cancer pain management, particularly in Pakistan?
जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम एंड थैंक यू वेरी मच एवरीवन जो भी ऑर्गेनाइजिंग कमेटी में है. दो बातें इससे पहले जो आपने सवाल पूछा है, जो अभी आपने डॉक्टर क्यानी से पूछे थे, जो सवाल शायद मेरी क्लैरिटी से समझ में नहीं आया, कि यू वांटेड टू आस्क कि क्या कैसे हीलिंग प्रोसेस में कैंसर की ट्रीटमेंट में हमारी कैंसर पेन मैनेजमेंट हेल्प करती है, यू मीन दैट?
जी, डेफिनेटली यही पूछना चाह रहा हूं.
क्योंकि थोड़ा सा क्लियर नहीं था. सो उसमें तो ज्यादातर मेरे ख्याल डॉक्टर क्यानी के पास भी ऐसे पेशेंट आते होंगे. ज्यादातर वो पेशेंट आ रहे होते हैं जिनकी रेडिएशन शुरू होती है और फौरन इतना पेन हो जाता है कि वो रेडिएशन के लिए ब्रेकी थेरेपी के लिए लेट नहीं पाते, कांस्टेंट ये नहीं होता, तो चाहते हैं कि उस दौरान जब ब्रेकी थेरेपी हो रही हो तो पेन रिलीव हो जाए, इस टाइप की चीज़ें हो रही होती हैं. या जो एज सच बाकी तो जो ट्रीटमेंट ऑफ पेन होता है वो एज सच हीलिंग से ज़्यादा अनफॉर्चुनेटली यही कि इस वाली चीज़ में कोई हीलिंग के साथ एज सच आई नेवर कम अक्रॉस एनी स्टडी, बट सम टाइम जस्ट टू continue the treatment smoothly, yes, we can provide good pain control that would help. आपने जो सवाल पूछा है what kinds of treatment available in cancer pain, certainly हमारे पास जो कंजर्वेटिवली अगर आप स्टार्ट करें, हम पास जो पेशेंट पहुंचते हैं तो ऑन्कोलॉजिस्ट हुए या जनरल सर्जन जिनके पास ऑन्कोलॉजी के पेशेंट हैं, गायनेकोलॉजिस्ट जिनके पास ऑन्कोलॉजी के पेशेंट हैं, बिकॉज हमारे इस तरह ऐसे डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन तो है नहीं. सो वो लोग सब लोग अपने लिहाज में फर्स्ट लाइन ऑफ ट्रीटमेंट कर रहे होते हैं. सो एटलीस्ट मैं अपने एक्सपीरियंस में कौन से पेशेंट पास रेफ़र होते हैं, वही पेशेंट रेफ़र होते हैं जो ऑन्कोलॉजिस्ट या जनरल सर्जन या कोई भी जो अपना ऑन्कोलॉजी पेशेंट कर रहा है वो वो उससे मैनेज नहीं हो पा रहा है. नॉर्मली जब मरीज आता है तो उसके पास एक लॉन्ग लिस्ट होती है जो ऑलरेडी वो लोग ट्राई कर चुके होते हैं, और वो उमन जो हमारे पास कम से कम लिस्ट होती है उसमें मरीज उमन नारकोटिक पर आया हुआ होता है, बट ही इज़ नॉट गेटिंग पेन रिलीफ. सो मुझे अपने एक्सपीरियंस में जो मैंने देखा है, इवन अगर पेशेंट 6 दवाइयाँ भी ले रहा है तो मैं आई ऑलवेज स्टार्ट विद بیسکس کے مریض کی کوالٹی آف لائف میں ہمیں کیا دیکھنا ہے کہ اس کو رات کو, کیونکہ بہت دفعہ مریضوں کا جو پہلا پرابلم ہوتا ہے کینسر کے پیشنٹ کا کہ وہ رات کو 6 گھنٹے نہیں سو پاتے. اور اف دا پیشنٹ, یہ اس میں بہت سی ریسرچ بھی ہے کہ جو نائٹ سائیکل ہے کسی مریض کی بھی, ریگارڈلیس آف ریزن, کوئی بھی کینسر ہو, نائٹ سائیکل نہیں ٹھیک ہوتی تو the person is not ready for the next day for any kind of challenges, including the pain is also a challenge. تو جو ریسٹنگ پین پہ بھی جو مریضوں کو تنگ ہو رہے ہیں مریض, عموماً بہت دفعہ تو آنکالوجی کے پین اگر سومیٹک ہیں یا میکینیکل اس کی ایکٹیویٹی کے سے نیوروپیتھک ایلیمنٹ نہیں ہے تو عموماً مسئلہ مریضوں کو نہیں ہونا چاہیے. بٹ پرابلم یہ ہے کہ مریض کی جو ٹریٹمنٹ کی جو پرسکرپشن آتی ہے ہم اس میں دیکھتے ہیں کہ ہم بہت سی چیزیں اینگل نہیں کر پائے. 4 طرح کی پین کی دوائیاں تو ہوں گی, بٹ جو دوسری چیزیں ہمیں چاہیے کہ وہ ایک مشکل دور سے گزارا ہے, وہ اینٹی ڈپریسنٹ بھی لے رہا ہے, اس کو فائنینشیل پرابلمس بھی ہو رہے ہیں, اس کو رات کو نیند بھی نہیں آ رہی ہے, اس کو اپنے آؤٹ کم کا ہی پتہ ہے. تو یہ والی چیز میں جس میں کہ تھوڑی سی سائیکو تھراپی, تھوڑی سی سی بی ٹی, کوگنیٹیو بیہیویئر تھراپی, یہ ہمارے ہاں بالکل لیک کرتی ہے. اور بعض اوقات پیشنٹ 6-8 دوائیوں پر ہوتے ہیں, بٹ وہ اس طریقے سے بات کر رہے تھے جیسے کہ ان کی مطلب آپ کو ان کو ٹیکا لگا دیں کہ وہ مر جائیں. سو اس میں جو مجھے ہمیشہ ہوتا ہے کہ یہ جو ایک بیلنس اپروچ نہیں ہے ہمارے ہاں, جو بھی ایک جن کے پاس لوگ مینیج ہو رہے ہوتے ہیں, and I'm excluding palliative care because palliative care کے لوگوں کی اپنی ٹریننگ کا پارٹ ہوتا ہے, pain and other aspects. So I'm talking about all type of physicians جو کینسر دیکھ رہے ہیں, ان کے پاس اس طرح کے, وہ ان کی میں بات کر رہی. سو ہمیں پاس جب آتے ہیں تو ہم ایک تو ان کی سب چیزیں یہ والے ٹھیک کرتے ہیں. سو جو مائی گول, فرسٹ گول, جسٹ ٹو پرووائڈ دا ریسٹفل نائٹ سلیپ, دیٹس مائی فرسٹ گول. پیشنٹ پین کے لیے آتا ہے, بٹ میرا فرسٹ گول یہ ہوتا ہے کہ پیشنٹ کو جب آئے تو اگلے ہفتے, جب 2 ہفتے بعد میں فالو اپ ہے تو یہ ضرور کیا کہ ہاں میں رات کو سونے لگ گیا ہوں. دیٹ شوڈ بی دا, وی ہیو ٹو سیٹ دا گول, بیکاز کینسر کے بہت سارے اپنے مسئلے چل رہے ہوتے ہیں. سو سرٹنلی وہ آپ کیسے مینیج کرنا ہے, آپ کو نیوروپیتھک پین کا ایلیمنٹ ہے, آپ نے اس کے کسی نیورو ماڈولیشن سے ہی اس کا سائڈ افیکٹ سے ہی اس کا نیند لانی ہے یا کوئی نیند کی دوائی دینی ہے, اس ٹائپ کی چیزیں. تو ہمارے پاس ایکچولی دوائیاں تو نان اسٹیرائڈل ہر طرح کی اویلیبل ہے جو لوگ دیتے ہیں درا کے. ہمارے پاس نارکوٹک میں ٹرامیڈول, ٹپینڈیڈول, باقی سب لنگول بپرینورفین اویلیبل ہے. مورفین کبھی ہوتی ہے کبھی نہیں ہوتی ہے, انفیکٹ سال کے 6 مہینے ہوتی ہے, 6 مہینے نہیں ہوتی ہے. مجھے نہیں پتا اور ہسپتال میں کیا, ہمارے یہاں تو یہ کہ ہر دفعہ کوٹا ختم ہو جاتا ہے وقت سے پہلے, اور پھر ہم بغیر کوٹے میں ٹپینڈیڈول اور ٹرامیڈول اس طرح سے کام کر رہے ہوتے ہیں سب لنگول سے. اسی لیے کئی دفعہ ہمیں پھر اس وجہ سے کہ جہاں آپ کو پین ریفریکٹری ہو گیا, آپ نے نارکوٹک بھی ٹرائی کی ہوئی ہے, جو نارکوٹک آپ کے پاس ہیں 2nd کلاس والی اور جو ٹپینڈیڈول ٹائپ کی دوائی ہیں, تو پھر آپ کو انٹرونشن میں جانا پڑ جاتا ہے. ہو سکتا ہے کہ آپ کے پاس مورفین ہوتی تو ہم شاید نہ جاتے. انٹرونشن میں جو کامنلی انٹرونشن کرنے پڑ رہے ہیں وہ تو سیلیک پلیکسس مین ہے, گینگلون امپارٹ. ہائپوگیسٹرک کا میرے پاس کم ایکسپیرینس ہے. somehow میرے پاس ایسے پیشنٹ ہیں جن کو میں ہائپوگیسٹرک کروں, کبھی سال میں 1-2 پیشنٹ آ گئے تو آ گئے, ادروائز somehow جو زیادہ پیشنٹ جو بھی آ رہے ہیں ان میں سیلیک پلیکسس اتنا میں کہتی ہوں اچھا سمپل بلاک ہے, پیشنٹ کی لائف کوالٹی آف لائف کو بڑھاتا ہے, سائڈ افیکٹس بہت کم ہیں اگر آپ کو صحیح اپروچ ہو. ہاں یہ ضرور ہے کہ ابھی تک ہم نے بیچ میں ریڈیو فریکوینسی سے کرنے کی کوشش کی, لیکن ریڈیو فریکوینسی کے رزلٹ اتنے اچھے نہیں ہیں جتنے ہمارے الکوہول کے آ رہے ہیں. تو اسٹل ہم نے دوبارہ سوئچ کر کے ہم الکوہول پر سیلیک پلیکسس میں آ گئے ہیں. باقی انٹراتھیکل نیورولسس بھی آپ کر سکتے ہیں. اس میں میرے پاس, میں ہر لسٹ پہ تو نہیں کرتی انٹراتھیکل نیورولسس, بٹ آف اینڈ آن میرے پاس آتے ہیں. انفیکٹ 1-1.5 مہینے پہلے ویری انٹرسٹنگ ایک بچی اوسٹروسارکوما کی میرے پاس آئی تھی. میں نے کبھی بچوں میں انٹراتھیکل نیورولسس نہیں کی تھی, اور پھر میں ون آف مائی کولیگ ڈاکٹر کیا نہیں بیٹھے, میں نے ان سے ہی بات کی, کیونکہ بچے کئی دفعہ آپ جو چیز آپ نہ کریں, چھوٹی سی بچی تھی 11 سال کی, 10 سال کی, اوسٹروسارکوما ہے, اس کو بہت انٹریکٹیبل پین ہے, ہر چیز اس کو ٹرائی کر لی ہے, تو اس کو انٹراتھیکل نیورولسس جسٹیفائی بھی ہو رہا تھا, کیونکہ میں نے بچے میں کبھی نہیں کی تھی. تو دیٹس وائی دس کائنڈ آف اے گروپ جو ہمارے کولیجیل ہمارا پین کا گروپ ہے نا, کام آ جاتا ہے. اپنے ایکسپیرینس سے کسی نے بچے میں انٹراتھیکل کیا ہے, بیکاز اڈلٹ میں تو کیا ہوتا ہے, اس کے لیے بھی ہم ڈوز کے بارے میں, پوزیشن کے بارے میں بہت کیئرفل ہوتے ہیں. بٹ کوئی بچہ آ جائے جس کو, جو ہم بہت فریکوینٹلی نہیں کرتے, میں بھی شوکت خانہ میں عتیق وغیرہ کے پاس بچے پھر بھی آتے ہیں. ہمارے پاس بچوں کا یہ والا بہت کم ہے, میرا پرسنلی بہت کم ہے. تو ہم نیورولسس پہ چلے جاتے ہیں. بس یہ والے ہمارے آپشنز ہیں. جہاں تک رہا ڈرگ ڈیلیوری سسٹم, آج سے 6-7 سال پہلے تک ہم ایک ڈرگ ڈیلیوری سسٹم اچھا بھلا ایک لو کاسٹ والا کر رہے تھے. ہم کیوں ہائی کاسٹ ہم افورڈ نہیں کر سکتے جو بہت مہنگا ہے. تو لو کاسٹ میں جس طریقے سے پوٹا کیف وغیرہ جو ہم ڈالتے ہیں کیمو وغیرہ کے, ہم اسی سے ڈرگ نارکوٹک جو ہے وہ دیتے تھے مریضوں کو انٹراتھیکلی امپلانٹ کر کے. سمہا وہ بھی براؤن نے بیچ میں, کیونکہ اس پہ کاسٹ ان کی وہ بہت سستا تھا, 22,000 کا تھا اور ان کو سوٹ نہیں کرا تھا, مہنگوں پہ جاتا, جو بھی وٹ ایور دی ریزنز ور, وہ آج کل البتہ ہمارے کم ہو گئے انٹراتھیکل. وہ حالانکہ بہت اچھا ہوتا تھا کہ آپ 2 یا 3 ڈوزز اس کی دے دیں, پیشنٹ کی فیملی کو پورا سکھا دیں, اگر کسی کے ساتھ نرس کو سکھا دیں کہ کیسے اس کو جو ہے اس امپلانٹ کو ہینڈل کرنا ہے. ہم بالکل اسی طریقے سے اس کی کراتے تھے 1 دن کی ٹریننگ, جو بندہ گھر جاتا تھا لے کے اس پیشنٹ کو جس کو کہ ہم انٹراتھیکل امپلانٹ ڈالتے تھے. تو اس ٹائپ کی چیزیں جو میں ابھی بھی سمجھتی ہوں کہ ہمیں اپنے حوالے میں لو کاسٹ افیکٹو ٹریٹمنٹ کی طرف ہی توجہ دینی چاہیے. جو چیزیں ہم بہتر کر سکیں, جن لوگوں نے کیا ہے یہ والا لو کاسٹ انٹراتھیکل امپلانٹ, وہ مجھ سے ایگری کریں گے کہ بہت لائف آسان ہو جاتی ہے, خاص طور پہ جن کے ملٹیپل سائڈ پین ہو, کہ وہ میٹس بھی ہے بیک میں, اور جو ہے وہ فیمر بھی اس کی پیلوس میں بھی میٹس بھرے ہوئے ہیں, فیمر میں بھی ہے. تو اس ٹائپ کے لوگوں میں انٹراتھیکل یا ایپیڈورل امپلانٹ بہت کام آ جاتے ہیں. تو بس یہی ہے مسئلہ, یہ کہ کینابس آئل جو اویلیبل ہے وہ ایکچولی پیور کینسر کے لیے تو نہیں, وہ تو کینسر کے ساتھ جو ایٹریبیوٹس ہیں کہ موڈ خراب ہے, نیند نہیں آ رہی, جنرل ریسٹلیسنس, اس میں زیادہ ہیلپ کرتا ہے. جو کینسر کے اپنے لیے کینابینوائڈس کی ڈوز جو ابھی ہمارے پاس جو کچھ اویلیبل ہے وہ تو دس اے ویری ویری اسمال ڈوز, تو وہ تو اور مہنگی بھی بہت ہے. تو انٹل انلیس کہ ہم لوگ خود لوکلی کوئی اپنی کوئی لو کاسٹ کے نہ بنائیں, میرا خیال ہے کینابس کا ایسا آپشن نہیں رہا ہمارے پاس.
Thank you, Dr. Gaur. My next question is from Dr. Lieutenant Colonel Rashid. Dr. Rashid, how would we assess cancer pain?
Sir, thank you very much, sir, for inviting me and arranging such a nice activity. I hope you are listening me.
جی بالکل صحیح آواز آ رہی.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much. So, sir, regarding assessment of cancer pain, Dr. Atiq has already comprehensively mentioned in his presentation that how to assess, and there are different tools of assessment of the cancer pain, but sticking to the basics, comprehensive pain history and clinical examination are both very important for pain assessment, sir. For this systemic approach in assessing pain characteristics, the site, onset, character, radiation, associated factors, timing, exacerbation and relieving factors, and severity is assessed in history and clinical examination. And in our clinical setting, the mnemonic like Socrates is very useful in clinical settings. So coming to the intensity, yes, it's the gold standard in pain assessment and cancer pain as well. Different tools we use like numerical rating scale and verbal rating scale to assess the severity and intensity of pain. And next comes to the site of pain and region of pain. The site of pain like bony tissue, involvement of bony tissue, including viscera, bone, soft tissues and nervous tissue involvement. And different syndromes, as Sir Atiq has already mentioned, that syndromic classification has also been established to assess the pain that is caused by the solid tumors. So I will not go into details, but neoplastic damage to the bone and joints that cause different syndromes and different regions of the body. And this is the one axis of assessment of pain. And then neoplastic damage to the viscera, hollow viscera, and that causes epigastric pain and different types of pain that originates from the viscera, like bladder and cranial pains, etc. All that. And the neoplastic damage to the soft tissue and other miscellaneous regions that involve that infiltrate the cancer cells and that causes pain. And the other one is the lesion of the nervous tissues itself. That causes peripheral nerve syndromes due to paraspinal mass or chest wall mass, radiculopathies, plexopathies, cranial neuropathies, and pain due to the central nervous system lesions. And for assessment, there are different tools that have been devised time to time. Initially, it was considered in the taxonomy of ISPA that they devised the assessment of both for cancer and non-cancer pains. That was based on 5 axes initially, and these includes anatomical region or pain site, systemic system responsible for the pain perceived, and temporal characteristics of and pattern of pain, and pain intensity, and time since onset and its etiology. So there was a few shortcomings, and it was criticized mainly because it does not aim at establishing a prognosis, and also lack of assessment of some components that involves the psychological components and emotional components as well. Then further developments that happens in International Classification of Disease, ICD criteria, that was revised time to time and with the passage of years. And then the 11th revision of ICD criteria, in chronic pain, the 7 groups were identified and included in chronic pain, chronic cancer pains, which were further subdivided into on the basis of location, visceral or bony, or its pathophysiological criteria like nociceptive neuropathic pain, and it was also described in its temporal characteristics like continuous or intermittent, episodic, or breakthrough pain. So these are the different tools which were used to assess the pain, and then finally there were few other classification systems which are not commonly used, but it is used in the hospital setting, indoor patients. It is used in few parts of world. I'm not sure that in our setups or maybe in well-established setups like Shaukat Khanum or Khan, they may be using these classification systems like Edmonton classification system of cancer pain. It was developed in 1989 and as a prognostic indicator for cancer pain management. It was initially containing 7 domains considered important in achieving adequate pain control. That includes mechanism of pain, incidental pain, daily opioid dose, daily opioid doses of daily opioid uses, cognitive functions, psychological distress, tolerance, and any past history of alcohol or drug addiction. So depending upon these domains, the Edmonton on a basis of Edmonton classification, they were classified in good, intermediate, or poor prognosis for obtaining adequate pain control. So it was further revised. Sir, I hope you are listening me.
जी जी बिल्कुल सुन रहे हैं.
मेरी स्पीड ठीक है सर, ज्यादा तेज तो नहीं बोल रहा मैं?
नहीं बहुत अच्छा, आप बहुत अच्छा.
Thank you, sir. So I'll just be winding up. It was revised in 2005 by and the name given the Edmonton classification system for cancer pain. It included 5 domains. Now the mechanism of pain: first, incidental pain, psychological distress, addictive behavior, and cognitive functions. These are further subdivided. I will not go into details. The mechanism of pain is further subdivided into 4 categories: no pain syndrome, any nociceptive combination, neuropathic pain, insufficient information. Then the incident pain, no incident pain present, psychological distress. They are assessed on different pain tools again. And the pain, finally, the Edmonton classification system for cancer pain profile is given to that patient, that particular patient. And last but not least, sir, the cancer pain prognostic scale was developed to predict the likelihood of pain relief for cancer patients with moderate to severe pain. It is basically a predictive formula that includes the worst pain severity, emotional well-being, daily opioid dose, and pain characteristics. So the cancer pain prognostic scale results can be summarized as a sum of, although it's a complex system, but the sum is ranges from 0 to 17. The higher scores in cancer pain prognostic scale is indicating higher probability of pain relief. So these are the different classification systems used. And our next question is.
Thank you, Dr. Rashid. You have explained assessment of pain in very detail. Thank you very much. My next, before going to next question, I would request all the panelists to turn on their cameras when they speak. All of us know that neuropathic pain is very difficult to treat, and really we see very often that nervous tissue is invaded by cancer and causes pain. I would request Brigadier Asif Kiani, how would we treat neuropathic pain? सर आसिफ सुन रहे हैं आप? डॉक्टर आसिफ क्या नहीं अपना जो है ना अनम्यूट कर दें माइक अपना प्लीज. सर आसिफ क्या नहीं अपना माइक अनम्यूट कर दें प्लीज, माइक और कैमरा. ओके, डॉक्टर आसिफ शायद हमें इस वक्त सुन नहीं रहे, तो यही क्वेश्चन जो है ना मैं रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा प्रोफेसर खालिद बशीर से कि वो इस क्वेश्चन का जवाब दे दें प्लीज. सर खालिद बशीर. उनको आप अनम्यूट कर देना यहाँ से.
क्वेश्चन रिपीट कर देंगे डॉक्टर?
जी सर, my question is how would you treat neuropathic pain?
Neuropathic pain in cancer patient.
Yes.
The treatment remains the same. The standard treatment उसका है neuropathic pain का, that remains the same, which includes intravenous lignocaine or gabapentin, etc., antidepressants, SSRIs. ट्रीटमेंट तो ये रहेगा, प्लस एंड ऑफ कोर्स केटामिन इन्फ्यूजन इज वेरी हेल्पफुल इन चीज़ों में. मेथाडोन ऑफ कोर्स अवेलेबल तो नहीं है, बट इट इज सेट टू कंट्रोल न्यूरोपैथिक पेन बेटर देन मॉर्फिन. एंड सेकेंडली जो हमारे पास ट्रामाडोल है ओनली अवेलेबल, एंड ट्रिपेंडाडोल इज मोर इफेक्टिव इन कंट्रोलिंग न्यूरोपैथिक पेन देन ट्रामाडोल. तो जो ऑप्शन अवेलेबल है इन्हीं पे हम कर सकते हैं बस. और कीमोथेरेपी का साइड इफेक्ट है न्यूरोपैथी एक, जिस नॉन इफेक्ट, और ट्रीटमेंट यही है जो मैंने बताया कि IV lignocaine for 5 to 6 days, and you can add ketamine in this infusion. Then even oral ketamine can be given, and tramadol, tapentadol सारी देनी पड़ती है पेशेंट को, and gabapentin and SSRIs and tricyclic antidepressant सारे हैं जो कि आप. And then the response of patient varies. Response to these drugs varies from patient to patient. किसी को किसी से आराम आएगा, किसी को किसी से आराम आएगा. So you will have to change the different combinations, change the drugs, change the dose. उससे होगा, इस तरह होता है. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Khalid Bashir.
कर दिया. Sorry, वीडियो ऑन नहीं कर सका.
No problem. My next question is from Dr. Farooq, who is a radiation oncologist at Shifa International Hospital. Dr. Farooq, my first question is from you is which cancer most commonly cause of bone metastasis? Which cancers most commonly cause bone metastasis? जी डॉक्टर फारूक आप अनम्यूट हो जाएं प्लीज.
जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम.
वालेकुम सलाम. डॉक्टर फारूक जी बिल्कुल सही आ रही है. آپ ہمیں بتائیں گے کہ کون سے کینسرز میں بون میٹاسٹاسس زیادہ ہوتا ہے؟ جی ڈاکٹر فاروق آپ ہمیں سن رہے ہیں؟ آپ کی آواز نہیں آ رہی ڈاکٹر فاروق. آپ ان میوٹ کر لیں اپنا مائک، ان میوٹ کر لیں پلیز.
آواز آ رہی ہے؟
جی
آپ
اب
کو
آ
آواز
رہی
آ رہی ہے؟
جی اب آ رہی ہے.
جی رائٹ. تھینک یو ویری مچ فار میکنگ پارٹ آف دس وonderful gathering. پین جو ہے نا جی، ایک سوال آپ نے پہلے کیا، میجر کنسرن فار ٹریٹنگ آن کال.
میں جو سنا تھا لاسٹ میں میری آواز ہے کلیئر ڈیفرنس ہے. ہاں کلیئر کرتے ہیں. اب تھوڑی سی آواز ساؤنڈ کم آ رہی ہے.
ہاں جی ڈاکٹر فاروق آپ کا جو ہے نا مائک ان میوٹ کر لیں اس کو، پھر میوٹ ہو گیا.
اب آواز آ رہی ہے آپ کو؟
جی اب آ رہی.
یہ بڑا انٹرسٹنگ ہے جی کہ مجھے موبائل بھی آن کرنا پڑ رہا ہے اور کمپیوٹر بھی آن کرنا پڑ رہا ہے تو آواز آ رہی ہے. تھینک یو ویری مچ فار میکنگ می پارٹ آف دس ڈسکشن. پین جو ہے وہ ایک میجر ایشو ہے ہمارے ڈپارٹمنٹ میں، اور آئی تھنک اٹس اے بیسک ہیومن رائٹ اینڈ ویری ایتھیکل دیٹ آل پیشنٹس شوڈ بی پین فری. Not only it improves quality of life, it gives us an ability to intervene, without hindrances. اور میرے خیال میں پین فری ہوں.
جی ڈاکٹر فاروق پلیز ذرا اونچا بولیے گا پلیز.
ہیلو
جی جی اب ٹھیک ہے.
جی، تو تقریباً سارے میٹاسٹاسائز کرتے ہیں بونز میں، لیکن 70% از اکاؤنٹڈ فرام بریسٹ in females, prostate cancer and lung cancer. ویسے تو I've seen thyroid, kidney, liver, myelomas, lymphomas, sarcomas, GI, you name it, and it's going to be there. So first thing, once we establish there is bone metastasis, we do a middle classification جو 12 کا score دیتی ہے. Low scores 1, intermediate score 2 اور 3 score ان فیچرس کو. اگر اپر لمب ہو لیس دین 1/3 سرکمفرنس ہو، اسکلیروٹک ہو، بون پین مائلڈ ہو، تو یہ 4 کا سکور بنتا ہے. سو یو ناٹ مچ ورڈ. اگر لوور لمب ہو 1/3 to 2/3 بون انوالوڈ ہو، مکس
ڈاکٹر فاروق شاید ان کا انٹرنیٹ کا کوئی ایشو میرے خیال میں محسوس ہو رہا ہے. سو جب تک ڈاکٹر فاروق واپس آتے ہیں ہم اپنے نیکسٹ کوشچن کی طرف چلتے ہیں.
ڈاکٹر سلمان ایک چھوٹی سی
جی
بات
جی
کر لوں.
ہاں جی 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 پلیز.
اچھا ڈاکٹر سلمان، اس میں سرٹنلی ڈاکٹر فاروق تو اس کے اسپیشلسٹ ہیں، اور ابھی جیسے عتیق نے بتایا کہ WHO کی جو 2018 کی نئی گائیڈ لائنس ریوائز ہوئی، اس میں تو ریڈیو تھراپی والوں کے لیے تو بہت ہی انٹرسٹنگ ساری گائیڈ دیا گیا ہے نا، کہ کیسے ریڈیو تھراپی کب کون سے میں ریفر کیا جائے، کب وہ کریں گے، کیسے کریں گے، کتنی سائیکل کریں گے نا. سو آئی تھنک ڈاکٹر فاروق کو تو خیر ایم شیور اویلیبل ہوگا، لیکن جو جن کی آواز نہیں آ رہی تو جو لوگ نہیں ہیں تو وہ اس گائیڈ لائنس میں ریڈیو تھراپی والی تو چیزیں بہت زیادہ ہیں 2018 کی گائیڈ لائنس میں. دوسرا میں کہتی کہ آپ ایک بات صرف مجھ سے مس ہوئی کہ سائبر نائف بھی پاکستان میں اویلیبل ہے، اور سائبر نائف از ون آف دا ویری امپورٹنٹ ٹیکنالوجی ہے، اور فارچونیٹلی مجھے اور جگہوں کا نہیں پتہ. کراچی میں جو ہے سائبر نائف کا جو سینٹر ہے وہ فری آف کاسٹ تھراپی ہوتی ہے. ویسے تو بہت مہنگی ٹیکنالوجی، بٹ جو ہمیں ہمارے پاس کراچی میں اویلیبل ہے سینٹر میں سائبر نیفس کی اور کینسر کی اچھی ٹریٹمنٹ ہے تو وہ ہے.
جی ڈاکٹر سلمان.
جی جی
I'm back. Sorry, I don't know what's happening. تو میں آپ کو مرل اسکور بتا رہا تھا اسپیشلی لانگ بونس کے لیے. اگر trochanteric region involved ہے, more than 2/3 of circumference of bone is involved, lytic lesions ہوں یا severe bone pain ہو جو کہ functional disability کرو تو وہ 3 کا اسکور دیتے ہیں. تو any score of Mirror above 9 needs a fixation by surgeon first. Unfortunately, Mirror score کی sensitivity تقریباً 90% ہے اور specificity 35% ہے. تو Mirror score ہم لانگ بونز میں یوزلی یوز کرتے ہیں اور جب پیشنٹ پین میں آتا ہے تو یوزلی we start with simple things like NSAIDs اگر ان کے رینل فنکشن ٹھیک ہوں اور گیسٹرک ulcers نہ ہوں. We add steroids with PPIs اور جن کو renal issues ہوں we straight away go for Tramal, Gravinate. And if we are unable to manage them, we opt for either opiates or we call the pain team. We do not hesitate in calling the pain team. اگر vertebra involved ہو تو اور ہمارے پاس اس پیشنٹس کی ہسٹوپیتھولوجی نہ ہو تو we usually opt for decompression, so we get tissue for diagnosis. And sometimes if the scenario allows, we do vertebroplasty or bone cementing, and that's done through Dr. Atif in intervention radiology or orthopedic surgeons. جیسے ڈاکٹر صاحب ابھی ذکر کر رہی تھی ریڈیو تھراپی جو ہے وہ پین ٹیم کے لیے آئی تھنک ون آف دا بیسٹ آرمامنٹ ہے. اینڈ جیسے ہم ہیزیٹیٹ نہیں کرتے پین ٹیم کو ایکسیس کرنے میں, آئی ایم شیور ہمارے ہاسپٹل میں باقی ہاسپٹل میں بھی پین ٹیم میں اور ہماری پیلیٹیو ٹیم بھی they just take no seconds to call us to relieve the pain because that's the basic right of the patient. اس کے علاوہ ہمارے پاس جو ادر آپشنز ہیں وہ کیمو تھراپی ہے. کیمو تھراپی کے لیے ہمارے پین کالیگس کو یہ پتہ ہونا چاہیے کہ the tumor needs to be chemosensitive. اگر جرم سیل ٹیومر ہے, لمفوما ہے, مائلوما ہے, بریسٹ کینسر ہے, تو there is a very high chance the patient will have a quick response. آپ 5-6 دن اوپیٹس دیں یا 10 دن دیں اور پھر ٹیومر شرنک ہوگا تو پین ریلیو ہو جائے گی. Normally bone is not going to kill the patient as fast as visceral metastasis does. تو میں آپ کو ایک ایگزامپل دیتا ہوں. بریسٹ کینسر اگر osseous metastasis کے ساتھ آئے purely, تو our usual treatment is not surgery obviously. We opt for hormonal management or targeted therapy with bisphosphonates, and that gives them a very extended survival. Bone metastasis treated with bisphosphonates have actually shown in lots of trials a survival advantage of bisphosphonates. This survival advantage is not seen in other cancers. Bone health کے لیے ضرور ہے, bone morbidity کم کرنے کے لیے ضروری ہے, لیکن survival باقی cancers میں یہ نہیں بڑھاتا ہے. اور جیسے کہ پہلے ڈاکٹر صاحب نے ذکر کیا تھا, جن پیشنٹس کی زندگی 3 months سے کم ہو اور ان کی کمفرٹ جو ہے that is the most important thing in your mind. You can call your radiation oncologists and tell them that the median survival of this patient is in days and weeks. تو ہم اسے single dose single session دے سکتے ہیں 800 سینٹی گریڈ کا. اگر پیشنٹ جو ہے وہ 3 to 6 months رہ سکتا ہے تو پھر 400 کے 5 ہم لگا سکتے ہیں, وہ زیادہ ڈیوریبل رسپانس دیتے ہیں. کارڈ کمپریشن میں اب ہمارے پاس ڈیٹا ہے کہ 800 single is inferior to 400 into 5 which is 2000 centigrade. اور اسی طرح اگر ہم یہ سمجھتے ہیں کہ ہمارا پیشنٹ extended survival ہے 6 months and more, so we actually opt for longer protracted treatment which is like 10 days of treatment. کچھ پیشنٹس ایسے ہیں جیسے پروسٹیٹک CA ہے, ہمارے پاس نیورو انڈوکرائن ٹیومرز ہیں جن میں وائڈ اسپریڈ ڈیزیز ہو اور osseous metastasis ہو جو کہ پینفل ہو, تو now we have access to strontium, radioisotope therapy, P32, نیٹ کے اندر لیوچیم 177 جو انمول میں دی جاتی ہے. تو یہ ساری جو ہیں یہ پین ریلیف آپ کی 3 to 6 months کے لیے کر سکتے ہیں. دے کین آلویز بی ریپیٹڈ. لیکن ان کا ڈاؤن سائڈ یہ ہے کہ ایک دفعہ جب آپ ریڈیو آئسوٹوپ تھراپی کر لیں تو you cannot probably subject them to subsequent chemotherapy. So it's more or less last treatment that is we are offering.
Thank you, Dr. Farooq. You have explained very well the role of radiation therapy, chemotherapy, other modalities in the management of cancer pain. My next question is from Dr. Romana. What is the role of opioids in management of cancer pain?
Can you hear me?
Dr. Romana, what is the role of opioids in the management of cancer pain?
Can you hear me?
जी थोड़ा सा ऊंचा बोले तो फिर ठीक है.
So as already Atiq told you in his talk that cancer pain is mostly, people are afraid of using the opioid, and we have to actually tell them how to use opioid, and since the life expectancy is not too long, so there is no chances of having any addiction to it. So we normally use opioid very frequently in Shaukat Khanam. We use this as oral route on the, we also use as the transdermal routes as well. Some of the patients has also received the intrathecal pumps as well, but at the moment we are not doing it. So we don't actually shy away from using opioid, and it's not causing any pandemic situation as it has caused in America for us.
Romana, are you using intrathecal pumps nowadays?
No, we have used it only last year. We are not using it at the moment.
Okay. Other than the opioids, what are other options do you have for cancer pain management?
So for the other options, if you look at it, these are the neuropathic pains that you can use, actually anticonvulsants medication, or we can use the, as Dr. Farooq said, radioisotope. So nuclear medicine in our hospital is also quite active about it, and they also use the radioisotopes. Plus the shrinkage that is caused by the radiation is also very helpful in reducing the size of the tumor, and the pressure symptoms that are causing the pain also gets relieved with the radiation therapy. Same is true for the chemotherapy for the reduction of the size of the tumor. However, the problem with the chemotherapy is that it actually aggravates, and the expression of the sodium channel is very much aggravated, and the pain afterwards increases for a while. So I have noticed that when I have done celiac plexus block and the patient goes for a chemotherapy, they came back with severe pain. And then I looked at the data and at the literature, and I found that every time they go for the chemotherapy, there is an increased expression of sodium channel, which causes pain to come back with more severity. So I normally prefer that if they are going to have a couple of sessions of chemotherapy, they should come after their final chemotherapy. Otherwise, you have to keep doing the celiac plexus block. We are also doing the radiofrequency ablation for these patients. We are actually doing a trial of giving celiac plexus neurolysis with RFA. So the data is in the process of collection. So let's see what comes up. And then we'll be able to see either we should be carrying out both procedure at the same time, or we should only do one procedure at the time. But so far, the combination of the procedures is quite successful. Intrathecal neurolysis is also being done by us, as Atiq has already told in his talk, and we are using phenol and absolute alcohol for it.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Romana. My next question is from Professor Dr. Saleh Khashkheli. We know that there are a couple of common side effects of opioids. One is constipation. How would you treat opioid-related constipation? Please, Dr. Saleh, tell us.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's a very common problem, and initially we need a general approach for that, like increase in fluid intake, encourage mobility and ambulation if appropriate or feasible for that patient. And more important is ensure comfort, privacy, and convenience for defecation. And also rule out and treat impaction, fecal impaction, because there is sometimes hard stool and it needs to be manually removed, or certain methods to be adopted for that. And then for coming on the pharmacological approach, there are various means, like we can use stool softener, but they do not have any big role. Osmotic laxative like milk of magnesia, it can be used, and also oral propyl ethylene glycol, that is lavage agent, it can be used. But in some cases metoclopramide may be useful, but particularly for upper GI. And there are certain drug groups which increases gut fluid production or motility, like chloride channel activators, and that is lubiprostone 25 milligram BID, it can be useful. And guanylate cyclase GCC agonist, that is linaclotide 72 to 145 milligram once a day, it can be useful. And there are also another group that is having high affinity serotonin and receptor agonist, which causes also enterokinetic activities, and that is prucaloparamide 1 to 2 milligram per QAD. Another group that is peripherally mu receptor opioid antagonists. They have a very limited effect on the CNS opioid receptor, because if we will reverse the opioid, use the agents which are reversal and work at the CNS, then pain will also occur. So there are certain agents, I don't know these are available in our setups or not, but peripherally mu receptor opioid antagonists like methyl naltrexone, it can be given at the dose of 12 milligram, and it causes the production of stool and within 30 minutes or 4 hours. And also naloxone 12.5 to 24 mg can be given, and also nalmedine 0.2 mg per orally. But the opioid patients on the opioid cancer patient must learn how they have to treat, rather prevent their constipation, because it has to occur. In the conditions when we are treating cancer pain, there is no dose limit for the opioid, and constipation is obviously to be experienced by these patients. So these patients need to learn general approach, and also available pharmacological agents can be tried.
Thank you, Dr. Saleh. My next question is from Professor Dr. Munir Chaudhary. The question is about pruritus. How would you treat opioid-related pruritus?
First of all, thank you very much, Dr. Salman, for arranging such a informative webinar and inviting me. Secondly, salam to all my panelists and speakers. As far as concerned your question, treating opioid-related pruritus. Opioids can be given orally, IV, subcutaneously, intrathecally. The most common complication of the opioids related to pruritus is seen in those patients which are treated by the intrathecal opioids. Usually symptoms appears in the face, neck, and the thorax. Most commonly, thorax is involved, face and neck. It may be histamine mediated or CNS mediated. As we all know that histamine mediated, तो उसमें ये है कि जो इसका सोर्स है, सबसे पहले जो हम फीस दे रहे हैं उसको स्टॉप कर दो, ओपिएट को स्टॉप कर दें, और एंटीहिस्टामीन डाइफेनहाइड्रामीन जो है वो 25 मिलीग्राम IV आप स्लो इनको डाइल्यूट करके दे दें। और इसके अलावा हम उनको लो डोज नैलोक्सोन भी दे सकते हैं, और पार्शियल एंटागोनिस्ट जैसे नैल्कोफिन है 2.5 to 5 मिलीग्राम IV वो भी दे सकते हैं। बस यही इसकी जो सिंपली ट्रीटमेंट है। स्टॉप कर दें, और एंटीहिस्टामिन मेनली तो यही दो चीज़ें हैं जो इसमें जो प्रैक्टिकल लाइफ में आया है जो इसको रिलीव कर देती हैं. थैंक यू वेरी मच.
Thank you, Dr. Munir. My next question is from Dr. Atiq. Dr. Atiq, would you tell us that at what stage of cancer we should consider interventional procedure? Dr. Atiq, can you hear me?
Right, so Dr. Atiq had his clinic, so he is gone for the clinic, and
Okay.
I'm sitting on his seat. So we normally
चले
consider.
आप ही जवाब दे दीजिए डॉक्टर अतीक की जगह.
ठीक है जी. So we normally consider interventional pain when there is no response to the oral medication or the opioid management that has been offered. We go as high as possible for the oral medication or the transdermal route, but when it becomes difficult for the patient to achieve quality of life or have some comfort in life, then we go for the interventional procedure. Some of the procedure, as pointed out by Dr. Goharav Shah, the celiac plexus blocks work very well. So we try to do those in the very initial phase of the disease. And for the minimally, your second question is minimally invasive procedures for cancer.
No, I want to, in this regard, I want to ask you that you will opt interventional procedure in the start of disease or in the later stage of disease. What's your choice?
There are some patients that I would like to quote. There was one patient who came into me and he was not on anything. So we only started paracetamol, he was fine. So obviously I'm not going to give any interventional offer to that patient. But on the other hand, if a patient comes to me who is already taking opioids and he is still not able to sleep, he is taking pregabalin, whatever other sedatives, and he is not sleeping, so I'll definitely going to give him interventional options. Plus there are some other things related to these patients. When you tell them the side effects of the intervention, some of them, they don't want to go ahead. For example, the cordotomy is one of the procedures that we can offer. But when you tell them that you will be paralyzed from one side, so I haven't seen a single patient who has agreed to it. There was one patient that we did intrathecal neurolysis 3 times, and the patient kept coming back after a couple of months, but he refused to have cordotomy. He was on a very late stage and he did not survive afterwards, but the thought of having paralysis of one side, unable to be able to move his legs, it was quite painful for him to think about it. So
Professor Khalid, Dr. Gaurav Shah, what's your opinion about this? Dr. Asif Kyani, would you like to say something?
मेरी जो ओपिनियन है ना सलमान साहब,
जी जी,
डिपेंड करता है कि पेशेंट को कितना पेन हो रहा है इस वक्त, ठीक है, तो उसकी लाइफ एक्सपेक्टेंसी कितनी और बाकी बच गई है लाइफ कैसी है. तो आप इंटरवेंशन कैन बी गिवन एट एनी स्टेज डिपेंडिंग अपॉन योर असेसमेंट. तो आप कभी भी जरूरी नहीं कि हम स्टेप लेडर पे ही चलेंगे हमेशा. आप पेशेंट की जो आया है उसकी असेसमेंट करके सेवरिटी ऑफ पेन देख के आप अगर चाहते हैं इंटरवेंशन, पेशेंट चाहता है इंटरवेंशन, तो आप जल्दी कर दीजिए. मेडिसिन ना खाए पेशेंट को नहीं खाना चाहता तो, क्योंकि पेशेंट की चॉइस, अवेलेबल फैसिलिटीज और ऑफ पेन, सेवरिटी ऑफ पेन एंड लाइफ एक्सपेक्टेंसी, ये चीजें सारी.
डॉक्टर गौर, आपका क्या ख्याल है इस?
डॉक्टर सलमान, एक तो जो जनरल उसूल है, ज़ाहिर है किसी सूरत में भी आप माइल्ड पेन में तो इंटरवेंशन नहीं करेंगे. जो डायलेमा हो जाता है वो मॉडरेट टू सीवियर में, कि वो मॉडरेट टू सीवियर है और अगर रिफ्रैक्टरी है तो भी आपका जब पास बहुत आसान सवाल हो जाता है कि आपको इंटरवेंशन करनी है. जो प्रॉब्लम होती है वहाँ के, इफ द पेशेंट इज सफरिंग फ्रॉम द मॉडरेट टू सीवियर पेन, but he can be managed on medication, but because of their underlying multiple problems including cardiac problem, post bypass है, stent डला हुआ है, क्लॉलिपिड पर है ऑलरेडी, इन चीज़ों पर है, उसके साथ 13 दवाइयों के साथ 6 दवाइयाँ और ऐड करना, दैट्स अ प्रॉब्लम. और अगेन यू हैव टू काउंसिल द पेशेंट, यू हैव टू गिव ऑप्शंस कि ये दवाइयों के साथ जो है ये वाला मसला है, इंटरवेंशन भी कोई ज़रा इज नॉट लाइक हर एक के साथ कोई ना कोई एसोसिएटेड प्रॉब्लम्स जुड़ी नहीं है, तो वो आपने रिस्क बेनिफिट देखना होता है. लेकिन मैंने कभी माइल्ड में कोई इंटरवेंशन नहीं किया, देयर इज नो पॉइंट ऑफ माइल्ड पेन पेशेंट। बहुत वक्त आते हैं कि कैंसर डायग्नोसिस होगी, हमें कहा गया है कि आपने कि जो ये कर देंगे, ब्लॉक कर देंगे तो हमारा पेन नहीं होगा ना। तो इन एंटिसिपेशन मैंने अपनी प्रैक्टिस में तो नहीं किया कि कैंसर हो गया है, क्योंकि ये जो वेरिएशन है ना अमंग द कैंसर सफरर्स, ये बहुत है। सो हर पेशेंट में डायग्नोसिस के फौरन बाद पेन नहीं होता। देयर आर पेशेंट्स जिनको अर्ली स्टेज में पेन हो जाते हैं, तो पेन सिवियरिटी होनी ज़रूरी है। जस्टिफिकेशन इंटरवेंशन की आपने हर सूरत में करनी है, बिकॉज इंटरवेंशन इज इंटरवेंशन, इवन द मिनिमम इंटरवेंशन इज इंटरवेंशन। तो आपने जस्टिफाई करना। तो मैंने माइनर में कभी माइल्ड में नहीं किया है। मॉडरेट टू सीवियर में अगर पेशेंट पेन पे मैनेजमेंट हो रहा है तो मैं करती हूँ। ओनली थिंग द पेशेंट टॉलरेट नहीं करा दवाइयाँ, उसकी प्रेफरेंस नहीं है दवाई खाना, तो सर्टेन देन वी कैन डू दैट।
जी डॉक्टर आपका क्या? जी प्लीज डॉक्टर आसिफ
करना चाहूँ। आई एग्री, टोटली एग्री विद डॉक्टर खालिद बशीर एंड डॉक्टर गौहर कि आप डेफिनेटली हम माइल्ड में नहीं करेंगे, मॉडरेट टू स्वेयर। बट एक और फैक्टर जो मेरी प्रैक्टिस में या बाकी वो लोग जो पेन प्रैक्टिस कर रहे हैं आउटसाइड बिग हॉस्पिटल्स, उसमें अवेलेबिलिटी ऑफ द ओपियोइड ड्रग्स की, तो हम उस
जी सर आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही, सर की आवाज नहीं आ रही डॉक्टर आसिफ कियानी की। तो हम नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन की तरफ चलते हैं। व्हाट इज ब्रेक थ्रू पेन? दिस मे बी लास्ट क्वेश्चन फॉर दिस पैनल डिस्कशन। डॉक्टर राशिद, प्लीज can you tell us what is breakthrough pain and how would we treat it? जी डॉक्टर राशिद आप सुन रहे हैं? आप अपना माइक अनम्यूट कर लें डॉक्टर राशिद।
हाँ सर मैंने कर लिया
जी प्लीज
सर। breakthrough pain in cancer population, sir, it's a transient increase in pain intensity, basically. In an otherwise stable chronic pain managed with opioid drugs. By definition, breakthrough pain is transitory increment of pain intensity in an otherwise stable chronic pain managed with opioid drugs. यानी कि ऐसा पेशेंट जिसको ऑलरेडी स्टेबल है और ओपियोइड पे उसकी पेन मैनेज हो रही है, बट सडनली ट्रांजिएंटली इंक्रीज इन पेन इंटेंसिटी इज नोन एज ब्रेक थ्रू पेन। सो स्टिल सर इसमें बहुत सारी कंट्रोवर्सीज हैं। देयर आर मेनी कंट्रोवर्सीज रिगार्डिंग डेफिनेशन ऑफ दिस ब्रेक थ्रू पेन. It was used as a name as a pain flares, incident pain and episodic pain are transitory exacerbations as well. But finally, European Association for Palliative Care Research Network experts ने जो इस पे final consensus दिया है कि that one thing is very common, that is more than beyond breakthrough pain, that there is increase in intensity of pain, which is with or without background pain. आई होप आप मेरा पॉइंट गेट कर रहे हैं सर।
जी हाँ जी।
तो इसमें जो कंसेंसस यही डेवलप हुआ है कि द नेम इज गिवन टू दिस ब्रेक थ्रू पेन इज एपिसोडिक पेन इन विच देयर इज ट्रांजिएंट इंक्रीज इन द पेन इंटेंसिटी. On that basis, the breakthrough pain rapidly using rapid acting or short acting opioids with rescue doses that can help to overcome this breakthrough pain.
Yes, very true.
And the dose is used usually in different literature. We found that it is the 1/6 of the total dose of opioids, which is used in 24 hours.
Thank you, Dr. Rashid. Because we are running short of time, we should, I think, end up now panel discussion. Now I offer our participants to put few questions to the panelists, if they want. जी यहाँ काफी participants ने बहुत सारे questions भेजे हुए, 160 questions participants के आए हुए हैं, लेकिन we are sorry कि due to short of time सारे questions के जवाब नहीं दे सकते, لیکن کچھ کوشچنز جو ہے وہ میں پینلسٹ کے سامنے رکھتا ہوں, تو آپ میں سے کوئی بھی ان میں سے جواب دے دے. ڈاکٹر سعدیہ نے پوچھا کہ رول آف ٹینس ان کینسر پین.
TENS, sir, is a complementary treatment. There is a role of TENS in uncontrolled pain or refractory pain. So it can modulate the transmission of pain as well. TENS and acupuncture, they all are included.
TENS کا ڈیفینیٹ رول ہے کینسر پین مینجمنٹ میں. ٹھیک ہے. ڈاکٹر حسیب نے پوچھا کہ which steroid should be used in cancer pain. جی ڈاکٹر گور آپ بتائیں گی کہ کون سا اسٹیرائڈ بہتر ہے؟ جی ڈاکٹر آصف کیانی آپ بتا دیجیے پلیز.
دینا کیوں ہے اسٹیرائڈ؟ کس پرپز کے لیے دینا ہے؟
کسی بھی پروسیجر میں یوز کرنے کے لیے انہوں نے پوچھا ہے ڈاکٹر سعدیہ نے.
دیکھیں جس طرح بھی آپ کا جو سی اے پینکریاز ہے اس میں ڈیکسامیتھاسون از ریکمینڈیڈ 5 ملی گرام بی ڈی, ویری ہائی ڈوزز, اس کے بڑے اچھے ریزلٹس ہیں. تو میرا وہ ڈیکسامیتھاسون تمہارے پاس تو ملتی ہے بیٹا میتھاسون بیٹنیسول, وہ 0.2 ملی گرام کی. تو میرا تو خیال ہے کہ
ٹھیک ہے. ڈاکٹر وردہ نے سوال بھیجا ہے کہ what kind of cancer patients with pain do you find the hardest to treat. جی آپ میں سے کوئی بھی جواب دے دیں اس کو.
ملٹیپل سائٹس آف پین, ملٹیپل ایریاز, میٹس جن کے بھی ہوں, جن کو لوور لمب میں درد ہے, اپر لمب میں بھی درد ہے, چیسٹ میں میٹس ہیں, جب جن سے ملٹیپل پرابلم ہوں وہ ڈیفیکلٹ ٹو مینیج ہوتے ہیں ان آور سیٹ اپ. ٹھیک.
ایک سوال ڈاکٹر علی کی طرف سے ہے کہ واٹ از ڈفرنس بٹوین کینسر پین مینجمنٹ ان ایڈلٹس اینڈ ان چلڈرن.
ہمارے پاس کم آتے ہیں, بہت کم آتے ہیں, اور میرا پرسنلی کوئی اتنا ایکسپیرینس نہیں ہے بچے ڈیل کرنے میں, فرینکلی اسپیکنگ.
جی اینی آف دی پینلسٹ.
جہاں تک تعلق ہے نا, اب دو باتیں آ گئی, ایک تو فارماکو تھراپی آ گئی اس میں, دوسری انٹرونشن آ گئی. فارماکو تھراپی میں تو آپ اس کی ڈوز ایڈجسٹ کر دیں گے. اصل کوشچن یہ ہوتا ہے کہ انٹرونشن کرنی ہے کہ نہیں کرنی. وہ ایک سوچنے کی بات ہوگی کہ اس کو رسک اینڈ بینیفٹ دیکھنے پڑیں گے, بچے کی اوور آل ہیلتھ, ڈیزیز, لائف ایکسپیکٹنسی, سیوریٹی آف ڈیزیز, سیوریٹی آف پین, اس کے بعد بندہ فیصلہ کر سکتا ہے کہ میں نے اس کو کوئی بلاک لگانا ہے کہ نہیں لگانا. جنرل جو ڈرگز ہیں وہ تو وہی دی جائیں گی جو ایڈلٹ کو دیتے ہیں ود ڈوز ریڈکشن.
جی 160 کوسچنز پارٹیسپینٹس کی طرف سے آئے ہیں. obviously سب کے جواب ہم نہیں دے سکتے. آپ اگر ان جو ہمارے ایکسپرٹس ہیں ان کو آپ ڈائریکٹلی بھی کانٹیکٹ کر سکتے ہیں اگر آپ کا کوئی پرابلم ہو.
میری ریکویسٹ ہوگی, سجیسٹ کروں گا کہ آپ سب کو ہماری ای میل ایڈریس دے دیں
جی
ہمیں ڈائریکٹ ای میل کر کے.
جی ہمارے واٹس ایپ گروپ پہ بھی آپ جو ہے جو STSP کا واٹس ایپ گروپ ہے, اپنا کوئی کوشچن ہو تو آپ اس میں بھی ڈال سکتے ہیں. ہمارے بہت سارے جو پین پریکٹیشنر ہیں وہاں اس میں موجود ہوتے ہیں اور وہ آپ کی ہر بات کا, ہر کوشچن کا, سوال کا جواب ضرور دیں گے انشاءاللہ. تھینک یو ویری مچ آل آف یو. Now I invite Brigadier Asif Kiani, who is President STSP, to conclude this program.
Thank you, Dr. Salman. I will not take much time. Already we have had a very thorough discussion on a very interesting topic. Or overall, all presentations are very nice. Discussions अच्छी होगी, बहुत अच्छा होगा, सारे aspects cover हुए. And I congratulate you again, once again, कि आपने second अपना जो webinar था, that was again very well organized and very well conducted. And inshallah, we hope to have irregular such sessions. Or it was very nice. And thank you so much.
I invite other centers for the fourth webinar. کوئی بھی سینٹر جو فورتھ ویبنار کرنا چاہے وہ رابطہ کر سکتے ہیں مجھ سے. سو ان دا اینڈ تھینک یو ویری مچ اگین. انشاءاللہ پھر فورتھ ویبنار میں پھر انشاءاللہ ملیں گے. Assalamu alaikum.